My name is Levi Cosijn. Welcome to this YouTube channel. Today I want to talk a little bit about the upcoming full moon in the sign of Taurus. And this will occur on November 12th, 2019 at around 2:30 p.m. Central European Time. I'm not going to go over what it means for all ascendant signs and so on, but I think it's worthwhile discussing the signs, these archetypes, and also what a full moon represents, right? The full moon is when the sun and the moon are opposite in the zodiac. They're exactly 180 degrees away from each other, right? And so the moon fully reflects the light of the sun. And so it's always important to look at this axis. Here we have the sun in Scorpio at 1951 degrees, exactly opposing the moon in Taurus at 1951 degrees. So I'm going to use a book I co-authored, Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind, to discuss these archetypes and to give the viewers an opportunity to reflect on that, because this, as I mentioned, these signs they're archetypes, so they can have so many expressions, and we give expression to these archetypes when they enter our consciousness. So it's always an opportunity to dive deep and to understand better what is going on, what the cosmos and what the planets, the grahas, are communicating to us on a symbolic level, right? The sun and the moon are the two luminaries, the two brightest grahas, or the planets in the sky, or celestial bodies in the sky. So the sun, of course, representing the fully masculine aspect of our psyche. The moon is the feminine counterpart of that. They are the brightest, they are the sattvic planets, and sattva translates as true essence. So they're in fact the foundation, or represent symbolically the foundation of who we are. Okay, so the sun is of course representing the light of consciousness, and the moon is the reflection of that. Moon representing the individualized consciousness, right? So in there lives our ideas, our longings, our emotions, right? The moon represents the mind, or the manas, the sensory mind. And then sun is, of course, the core identity, who we are on the level of soul, that eternal aspect of our being. Okay, so as full moon, these two communicate in an opposition and shedding light on the archetypes, in this case of Taurus and Scorpio. There's also two minor aspects going on here. We have a sextile, which is a harmonious aspect between Mars and Jupiter during that time, and also Saturn and Neptune have been sextiling for some time and will be sextiling for some time, because they're very slow moving planets. And the sextile is a 60-degree aspect, right? You can see this here. This is 30 and then 60 degrees. Okay, so is of course half of a trine. A trine is a harmonious aspect, and of course these major traditional or Ptolemaic aspects are regular polygons that can be drawn in a circle, right? So this is an opposition, right, which is a line through the middle, and then we have the conjunction, right? When planets are exactly conjunct, they have the same ecliptic longitude degree, and right, so that's the aspects that are going on. And here, this green line rather, this is a Rashi aspect. This is in fact based on direction, not based on degrees. All these Ptolemaic aspects are based on degrees, okay, and the Rashi aspects are based on direction. So here Taurus looks at Libra, right, in front. It looks in front, and so a planet here within the second Navamsha is going to aspect the planet in the eighth Navamsha of any movable sign, right, because the fixed aspect, the movable, and so on. So, but the important thing here is the signs. So what do these signs represent? I'm going to touch on what Parashara has to say about it, and this is coming from Brihat Parashara Horashastra, which is one of the authoritative texts we use in Vedic astrology. Of course, there's many other texts out there, right? So also I'm going to look at what Jaimini Upadesa Sutras has to say about these two signs. And then as we go along, you can, derive meaning from that yourself, okay? So let's dive in. So Taurus, Risha, right, is the bull, right? This is represented by a bull, so a male cow standing on four legs. It's in fact not only cows, it's also boars. It has all, coming from that family. The parasha describes white. So the color white is associated. It's ruled by Venus. Taurus is ruled by Venus. Long, so it's long-bodied. Four-footed. So of course it's a quadruped, right? Stands on four legs. Night strong. Southerly, so earth signs are always connected to the south because the earth is below our feet. Village living, so it's associated with villages and pastors. A merchant, because it's a Vaishya sign, one of the Vaishya or merchant signs is Taurus. Okay, so we have the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, the Sudras, and the Brahmins. And Taurus so has that connotation as well of being a Vaishya, right? It wants to trade. And of course, we know that Taurus is an earth sign, which has to do with value and material value and so on. Earthy, Rajas, so it's the Venus signs are all Rajasic. Our Venus is also a Rajasic planet. So Rajas translates as mist, but it, connects to passion also. These are passionate signs. Planetary word is Venus, as I mentioned. Now the body part is the neck and the face. So it relates to the lower part of our heads, the face, as well as our neck. Some people exclude the neck. The face contains the sensory organs, which are the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears. So Taurus, of course, obviously is going to connect to what we need. The air comes through the nostrils and the mouth, right? The food goes through our mouths. The water goes through our mouths and so on. So this is what we need. Taurus is what we need on a daily basis, from moment to moment also. All right, we need to eat, we need to keep eating and so on. So Taurus represents that. It's the second sign of the zodiac. The second reflects the first, right? And so has to do with when the first house relates to the body, then the second house is what the body needs to support itself, like food and also money and so on. So Taurus is that earth sign which needs and which fulfills our needs on a material and also physical level. It's also the organs of speech are there, and our taste, our teeth, which are important in processing food. It's an amazing sign, and it's amazing what it actually represents, right? And then, of course, the neck and the vocal cords give us the flexibility. So no coincidence that Taurus is an earth sign. It represents what we need to feel nourished on the concrete and the material level, right? That's it. And of course, that's the reason why the moon, a representation of our needs, is exalted in the sign. So exaltation means it's in a high expression there, so it can express itself in the best way possible in the sign of Taurus, especially in the first 3 degrees. Venus is the planet of fulfillment and our self-worth, and being having all these connotations connects to that. Self-worth is your ability to block things out that are harming you, are not fulfilling you, and allowing things in that can give you something. And so Taurus has to do with that. Okay. Taurus is also a fixed sign, right? We want to be stable. We want to have a fixed, like a fixed income. We want to have a fixed inflow of money to be able to support ourselves and so on. Again, relating to maintaining material stability. It's a female sign, right? Moon is exalted in a female sign. Moon is, of course, the fully feminine planet, and so it suits, right? It works, and it's receptive, means that Taurus is receptive, is adaptable to provide for its material needs. That's, the gentle rashis, which are the even rashis, have that quality of being more receptive than the outward pushing forward male or odd signs. I mentioned it's a Rajasic sign. It feels passionate. Of course, Venus connects to beauty, aesthetics, good food, drinks, and all sorts of luxuries. The dasha is mixed of Pitta, Kapha, and Vata. All earth signs are. The planet connected to the earth element is, of course, Mercury, and Mercury has also these connotations, right, of being versatile and so on. Then the earth element, as I go into, it's a Vaishya, so it enjoys exchanging that which is of practical value. And you will see that people with good Taurus, like a Venus in Taurus, the moon in Taurus, they're able to share their resources. They're able to provide. They're incredibly resourceful. That's what Taurus is. And the second house, because Taurus is the second sign, relates to that. It's resourceful. It's getting what you need when you need it. That's what it means to be resourceful. And of course, finances is nowadays a very important aspect of getting what we need, and is essential in providing or for what we need. The south direction, as I mentioned, is a quadruped, so it's strong and to take on responsibility. Of course, to maintain your material stability, you have to be strong, you have to be grounded. The moon is, of course, very up and down. It's waxing and waning, and Parashara describes the moon as being fickle. So it needs that earth element and also that feminine earth element to feel at its best and to provide for what Taurus represents. The size is long. When the ascendant sign, for example, the first sign, the first house is Taurus, and then you have Saturn there. Generally you will find someone who's taller, and you also have to always relate that or compare that to the family that they were born in, right? So, but you'll see that Taurus has long-bodied, and then planets that make things longer, like Saturn, for example, can create or manifests longer bodies. It's living in a village, right? So villages are connected to that. In ancient India, cows were, of course, respected. It's a holy animal and providers of abundance. Also, the Satya Yuga, for example, is represented by a cow standing on 4 legs, right? And the color associated is white. What we can conclude here is that Taurus is about our material security, providing what we need on that level. The sign of fulfillment, Venus rules that. This axis is about needs, material needs and security, worth, 4 legs, on the ground, solid. And then Scorpio is, of course, the complete counterpart. It's representing our psychological, emotional needs that cannot be fulfilled on the material level, but on the deep emotional and spiritual level. So let's take a look at what Scorpio represents. Again, according to Parashara Horashastra. Small-limbed, many-footed, a Brahmin, in a hole, abiding in the north. Okay, so small-limbed, it's not long, it's small, all right? Many-footed, it's insect, it's an insect sign. So it has many feet, it can, cling onto things, it can move on walls and so on, right? It's a Brahmin. Okay, it's not a Vaishya, it's a Brahmin. And all Brahmin signs, they have a yearning for spiritual development. But that's what Brahmins do. Okay, that's what Brahmin is associated with. That contemplation, meditation, knowledge, understanding. Going deep into the spiritual aspect of life. All water signs, of course, the water always has a spiritual connotation. That's why the water signs, according to Gemini, have the most potential for spiritual development. And we all have 3 water signs in our horoscopes, right? So in a whole, abiding in the north, because the water signs always connect to the north, right? The north being the highest point. So spiritual elevation and so on is connected to the north. Rich in vigor during the day, so it's a day sign. This is can be important in terms for prashna, for example, or when people have their 10th house or 10th lord in a day sign, then maybe they're working during the day. People with night signs, maybe they're working, or maybe they're working in a subway station or something where there's not much daylight and so on. You can use this in that context. Tawny, so yellowish brownish, is connected to Scorpio. Exposed to water and land, bristles abounding and very sharp pointed, right? Bristles are like these sharp hairs standing like straight. Sharp is, of course, because Scorpio is ruled by Mars, right? So it has this protective tendency, defense, and also, right? So the Scorpio, right here you see it, the symbol, it's moving. It's a feminine sign, but it has this arrow pointing, which also seems to be like a sharp thing. And of course, Mars is connected to all sharp things. So Scorpio is a water sign. Mars is the fire planet. So it's an interesting dynamic. Water signs want to become emotionally secure, need to dive in and to become emotionally receptive to what they actually need, what the soul needs, what they need to feel fulfilled in life. We say that, Scorpio is the most intense sign. It needs Mars, it needs will. Mars connects to your will to restrain from certain desires. Scorpio can have that tendency to look for desires that simply can't be met. That's why Scorpio is connected to sex addictions, because there's this constant need to feel fulfilled on an emotional level. And of course, by having sex and more sex and more sex and more sex, is at a certain point, it's going to be really draining. And, so often when Scorpio is afflicted, there's a difficulty in finding what one needs on the level on the emotional level, okay, because there's this need, deep need, which is beyond anything earthly, so to speak. So it points the way Mars uses volition and will to cut through the cords which prevent it from transmuting desires that can be met. So in that sense, it has a spiritual connotation always, right? So Scorpio is intense, powerful. It's the 8th sign of the zodiac. So it's where the zodiac shifts, right? From Aries, Libra, Scorpio. So there's this twist going on. And so soul becomes more and more connected to the spiritual realms, right? This is, of course, what the deeper you go into the zodiac, what it represents. It's a whole cycle of evolution, and with Pisces representing elevation and so on. So in Scorpio, we have that second water sign hitting, right? First, we have Cancer, which is all about finding out what we need on the level of heart, on the level of mind. Then we go through that cycle until we arrive at Scorpio. And so Scorpio, we have to come to grips with what we actually need, what is realistic also, and what can fulfill us, what cannot fulfill us. And so we can have, the realization, or Scorpio provides that, right, or symbolizes the realization that, at a certain point, we have to confront, or we have to align with something that is beyond that kind of fulfillment, so in that sense, the spiritual realizations and so on. And we need, of course, Mars to, as a soldier, right, to march forward and to enable us to come to a point which is then symbolized by Sagittarius, which is a man on a horse, right, strong, shooting its arrow, which shows that it has a long-term goal. Right? It shoots its arrow to Pisces, which is all about elevation and liberation. Okay, so Mars, I mentioned, see the private parts, that's what Scorpio represents. Taurus is the face, Scorpio is the private parts. So anatomically, Scorpio represents the genitalia and the anus. So it's the sensitive organs that are not protected by bony structures like the vertebrae and so on, right? And here we wrote the rib cage protects the heart, and the lungs and the cranium protects the brain. So Scorpio doesn't have that. This, symbolically represents the vulnerable parts of our psyche. In Scorpio, right, we become aware of our complex psychology. That's again why we need Mars. Through facing our suffering, which is tamas, because Scorpio is a tamasic sign, it's not a Brahmin sign. Here, Taurus is a Rajasic sign, but Scorpio is a Brahmin sign. So it is about, becoming spiritually aware. In order to become spiritually sensitive, or in order to find a way to spirituality, to liberation, we have to, of course, become psychologically and emotionally healthy and aware, right? That's why Carl Jung always said that we need psychology, right? In what he then referred to as the Aquarian age, right? We need more psychology. We need to understand that people need to come to grips with their shadow sides, and to understand what is going on, because there's this conscious entity, but there's this whole unconscious being, which we are not aware of. And so that is actually what is, steering the chariot. And so it's important. And so Scorpio represents that. The 8th sign, we know that the 8th house, like the sun in the 8th house, connects to psychology, right? And to dive deep and using logic, Mars, the mind, logic to understand what we are, and also to have the courage and the sharpness to cut cords of addiction, of emotional patterns that do not longer serve us. Okay, so it's important in that sense. Scorpio is the area corresponding to the outer sexual organs. Again, as I mentioned, right, intimacy and so on, right? You don't want to, be touched unless you go very intimate with the person, right? So it's the parts of ourselves that are hidden. Scorpio is, of course, a hidden sign. The 8th house is a hidden house. It's a moksha house. So, right, we have all these connotations. So intimacy, a deep level of intimacy with another person, but also with ourselves. Okay, so then it's a fixed sign. So these are, opposite, fixed. The opposite signs here are always the same modality. Scorpio is also a fixed sign. So it's fixed on the quest to achieve emotional security. That's why Scorpio, right, being also an insect sign and having many legs, can also hold on to things too long. When Scorpio is your 7th house, for example, then and there's some affliction there, the person just holds on too long to things that are negative, for example. We also have Mercury here. Mercury is, of course, the messenger. Mercury is the intellect. Mercury is still retrograde. So it's closer to the earth and becomes more powerful. Retrogression has to do with perhaps being a little more rebellious. We're revising things. We're thinking about things. Mercury is that thinking, intellect. Mercury Sun conjunction here, which shows that there's a way of going about this, of probing into what Scorpio represents. It's also a female sign, right? A gentle sign, a female sign. So it's an even sign. So it's important to focus on inward, on being, as opposed to the outer sign ruled by Mars. All planets except the Sun and the Moon have 2 signs, a masculine and a feminine. An unhealthy manifestation of Scorpio is hold on to pain and become self-destructive, right? That's why the Moon, of course, is debilitated in the sign of Scorpio. Here, Moon is exalted in Taurus, but debilitated in its opposite sign, and especially within the first 3 degrees of Scorpio. So the person and the mind, the emotions, hold on to things that are negative, right? Things that are not really helping them to get nourished in life. It's a tamasic sign. Tamas is about suffering, overcoming suffering. It's in inertia and density, which is important, right? It's one of the 3 gunas which are important in nature. And so it needs that motivation, of course, to get rid of its suffering, to tackle it. And that's why, of course, Mars is important here. The dosha is kapha, so it has more receptivity, enjoying being comfortable in its environment, right? That Scorpio needs security, right? These are the signs of security, the 2nd, 8th, 11th, and what is it? I forgot, the 5th, right? These are the houses of security. The element is water, as I said. All water signs are feeling oriented, have always spiritual connotation. So it's about connecting on a deeper level and getting rid of destructive behaviors and so on, right? It's also symbolized by a snake. I will see this later in what Jamie has to say about it. It's a Brahmin sign, so Brahmin signs, again, want to contemplate, want to get into, and have a yearning to liberate themselves spiritually, okay? The north direction, many-footed, so it can cling on what is desirable. It can be positive or negative, depending on its condition. The animal is associated as a scorpion, small-limbed and resides in a hole. The fact that it has bristles symbolizes its extreme sensitivity to the environment, right? Due to the sharp sting on its tail, the scorpion appears dangerous. If a person has well-dignified planets in Scorpio, they have a strong intuitive ability and are hard to deceive. That's definitely true, right? The good Scorpio, you'll see, you can't fool them. And since Scorpios are both exposed to water and land, they have the need to work on both their emotional and practical sides. Okay, then we have some colors associated and places, desert holes, prisons, because it's where we go deep, right? It's connected to the underworld also, right? We know that Pluto relates to Mars, right? Pluto being the 12th planet, Mars the 3rd planet. Pluto is, of course, traditionally rules the underworld, right? It's equivalent to Hades and so, but deep in the earth also live the minerals, so it also has that connotation of it's capable of producing amazing results and great breakthroughs. That's, of course, the bliss and the grace and what Scorpio can give on the deep spiritual connection also, right? That's ultimately what it is. And when you go beyond some addiction, you free yourself, and in freeing yourself, you are yourself more naturally, and thus you feel fulfilled in life. And that's what Scorpio can give. Okay, then we also have the Gemini, what Gemini has to say about these signs. So Gemini Sutras, Taurus. In that, he's very brief about it, right? Gemini is always very brief. In that place, Taurus, a quadruped, so standing on 4 legs. So, of course, the cow is a symbol of fertility, abundance, as I mentioned, relating to Satya Yuga, or the Golden Age. Being the core challenge here, we wrote one sentence for all of these signs, is being firmly grounded and focused on providing material security for themselves and for their close ones. This is also relating to the Swamshas, or the Atmakaraka planet in the sign of Taurus in the Navamsha. The connection between the material and the spiritual, right? The opposite sign is always important, because of course these signs, the opposites in their extremes, are going to act very similar, right? So it's good to see what the other opposite sign represents, and this is one axis. This is a need, right? This is important. Scorpio, demons, water serpents, Vishnu, and deprivation of that contained in the breast. Okay, so demons connecting to psychological sensitivities. Water always has a spiritual connotation. Serpents shed their skin, so it has to do with transformation. Vishnu is, of course, depicted as a serpent often. And deprivation of that contained in the breast. Okay, the breast is Cancer, but the moon is debilitated in the sign of Scorpio. And the moon is, of course, the mother, right? Mother's milk, mother's nourishment. So nourishment, but nourishment on the deep emotional level. So affliction to Scorpio, Saturn and Scorpio, it can be difficult for the person to feel that nourishment on the emotional level. And so they're going to have to go through these complexes, which are represented by Saturn, for example. Of course, you can look at your natal horoscope and how this full moon connects. There's endless ways that this can play out. But here I wanted to focus on the full moon in these signs. So shedding a light, and this is on a collective level. Uranus can create rapid growth. Here we see also that Mars is sextiling Jupiter. Mars is our volition, our will. Sextile is a 60-degree aspect. It covers 3 signs, and the number 3 always relates to Mars, or pushing forward with something, acting on it. And of course, the sextile is a harmonious aspect. So applying will, applying action and courage, we can get a lot of things done. Jupiter is, of course, strong here in its own sign in Sagittarius. Jupiter is the teacher, the guru, but also making wise decisions, using your will in a wise manner. And then we have Saturn sextiling Neptune, and Neptune is, see, Neptune, the root of the word, it's debatable, but it has to do with neb, right? And which connects to nebula or mist, fog. So Neptune has that connotation, right? It always has a spiritual connotation, but it has to do with water, and also has an emotional connotation, right? Of course, the tritent here, and in the sign of Pisces, sextiling Saturn, the planet of our psychological complexes, is one thing, right? And so there's some good energy going on in terms of getting insight into that. So if you're interested in a reading, or if you're interested in the book, you can go to my website, levicosijn.com, levicosijn.com, and you can find me there. I have a bunch of services I offer. We'll talk to you soon.